Matt and John from American Pulps. Welcome back to the show again. Two of the classiest looking men in pulp today.
It's a low bar. It's a low bar.
It's a very low bar. We try.
And deliver and succeed. So, getting started, we are still on our series on the influences of Indiana Jones. Last time we had you on the show, we talked Secret of the Incas, which I didn't realize until I was watching this one, The Naked Jungle. Again, not a porno. That film came out the same year as this one.
Huh. Oh, I didn't realize that. I looked it up and everything. I didn't even clock that.
So astonishingly, like these are two different films that came out at the same time, both starring Charlton Heston, that are considered to have a significant enough influence on Indiana Jones. And I just thought that was fascinating. This is also the only Paramount one, I think, which they're the studio that released Indy. So it's got a couple of interesting crossovers.
Yeah. Did you look up which one did better? Like fared? I know Secret of the Incas was a huge success. I don't know how this.
Actually, that's a very good question. Box office numbers. So what were your guys' general impressions while I'm searching box office? John, without giving away too much, as we're going to walk our way through the movie, what was like your initial?
I thought it was a far more beautiful movie. Like the actual, it's interesting that was a Paramount release, because that was still during the period of time where they were really the studio that had that like beautiful sheen. They were sort of known for that, like really like they were like a much more synonymous with like just, I don't know if the word classy, I guess would be the word. Like it was like the production design.
Yeah,
like the production design, and the costumes were I mean, it was all just like so beautiful. I think Edith Head did the costumes. But like
2.3 million.
Really
was that this movie did 2.3 million at the box office
in 1950
or whatever. Or whatever. Yeah, it's pretty good.
1954.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I mean, it was interesting. It was like, initially when I was watching it, you sort of initially get the sense of the relationship between the two of them, and like through my modern eyes, I was like, oh god, here we go. But I thought that and we'll get into it more, of course, but I thought that they did a really good job of sort of like balancing, like, this isn't what the movie's saying.
Yes.
This is who this character is. And like, I always find that really interesting. I had read, oh no, I didn't read. I listened to like an old radio drama of Lanigan versus the Ants. And I thought it was going to be, but really basically Act 3 of this movie is
the short story.
Yeah. Short story. Yeah.
So, but fun fact about that radio drama: the guy that plays the commissioner in this movie is the voice of Lanigan in the radio program.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's like a nice little thing.
I like when they do that. Yeah, I like when they do that. That's like The Last of Us right now. They have a lot of the characters from the video game are in the show. I love when they have that crossover.
Matt, what were your general impressions going into this movie?
Well, I mean, yeah, we'll get into the plot and everything later, but I think on the surface, I went into it thinking ants, but
it's just that scene between Paul Rudd and Michael Douglas, like slapping their thighs. Ants.
Yeah,
ants.
Exactly. I went into it like not expecting much, and actually ended up liking it more than Secret of the Incas. I thought it was a much better, like John was saying, a better produced film. I think the story was a little tighter. Even with the ants, it was like still kind of plausible, which was interesting. And
plot holes.
Yeah. Yeah. And with like with my modern viewing habits, I sometimes I'll watch an old movie and it's like, oh, okay, I'm on my phone. So I'm always intrigued with when it's like a movie that like really holds me captive. even though I have a cell phone in my pocket and all these other things that I can take my attention away. And this one actually kept me captivated throughout. So I liked it. It's a good movie.
So
we're such smart literary people that we're not tempted by things like phones, like we might have a paperback in our pocket, right? I mean, we're so like we're beyond that. We're not basic, right?
No. I don't look at Wikipedia to see, who that actor, when that actor died. I don't do that. I'll pull out.
I'm not checking my likes on Instagram. I'm not vapid.
I'd like to say I wasn't on Instagram at all watching this movie. The honest truth is I might have been on it twice. But one of them was to schedule a podcast interview. So that's what I'll take as my reason.
Well, that doesn't.
That's fine. It's work. It's work
related.
It
was probably early on too, because it did have a slow burn at the beginning. It was a little tough. And it picked up.
So fun facts about this movie. It is directed by Byron Haston. The screenplay is by Ronald McDougall, something like that. Ben Maddow and Philip Jordan. Philip Jordan, autocorrect again. But the interesting thing is Ben Maddow was the screenwriter for Asphalt Jungle.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Good film.
Yeah. And then we have Eleanor Parker is Joanna. Charlton Heston plays Christopher. Abraham Safir, probably pronouncing that wrong, plays Inkacha, who's like his number one man.
Oh, yeah.
And William Conrad plays the commissioner.
His number one man looked like Ben Kingsley. I was like, it's like it's Ben Kingsley in blackface or like brownface or whatever. It was amazing.
Yeah. I love how the 1950s, like it was very like there was all sorts of like, and of course as we go through the plot of the movie, like there was I don't know what people would call sort of colonialist points of view or whatever you call it, but there was so many of them. It was so amazing.
So let's get into the plot. First and foremost, I also do want to point out Eleanor Parker, who plays the wife Joanna. She actually has billing ahead of Charlton Heston in this movie.
Interesting,
which surprised me.
Yeah, and Charlton, it's not like it was his, early on in his career. He'd been pretty established at that point.
No, because I think that he had been in Ben-Hur by now.
Yeah.
So an odd little fact, but we open with Joanna is on the boat, and immediately the thing that captured me in this movie is, like John was saying, it looks so much better than Secret of the Incas.
Yeah,
even though I think most of the movie is made of sets. Like I don't.
Oh, that looked like a total process. Yeah, I mean, it looked like
for no locations to speak of. It looks gorgeous.
Yeah,
genuinely. Like even the matte paintings they have in the background for like when they show the full scope of like his plantation, it's very obviously matte behind, but it's like a beautifully done and like it looks good instead of being like that. Oh, that's a little
painful. On the boat. I
love that look.
Yeah, all the matte paintings are great. On the boat, the green screen was a little, for us today, it's like watching an old Hitchcock movie and they're like driving and
But even watching like Indy, Raiders of the Lost Ark, there's one set where you can tell they did that kind of thing, and even that looks a little janky by today's standards.
Oh yeah. Forrest Gump, there's a shot of him walking that like I watched it recently. I was like, oh, that's interesting. They definitely shot that on a green screen.
Yeah, or the African Queen, right? When they're going down the waterfall or whatever, the rapids. And it's like you have a couple of those close-up shots, and it's whatever it is, a rear projection or whatever they're using, and you're like, oh, this. I mean, I could see how at the time, and it's such a great movie. I mean, nothing against the movie. Exactly. It was just they were using what they had. I mean, you watch the Terminator, and like there's certain parts of the Terminator which I think is one of the greatest achievements in movies.
Yeah,
and it's like still you're like, well, it was the time. So it's amazing to think that like. The dinosaurs from like Jurassic World Dominion or whatever the hell are going to look fake in 10 years. It's crazy to me that's like, because it's like, how much more real are things going to look?
Yeah, no, I remember when like video games when I was younger, I was like, oh man, Tomb Raider's so realistic. I don't know, like PlayStation.
It's not going to beat Altered Beast, right?
Yeah. Like, how are they going to top this? Yeah.
So we're on the boat, and Joanna's talking about how she asks the guy who's there, the like boat guy, "What is my husband like?" And he's like, "Haven't you met him?" And it's such a, again, so I've been like reading books on dialogue and storytelling a lot lately. I'm trying to like read one a month at the moment. And it's always interesting to watch how they make exposition feel natural and like bring it up organically without being like, so these are all of the 5 or 6 things you need to know before entering this movie.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And I think they really did a good job in the writing with this particular scene, because it really does draw out that she's been married by proxy. You get an introduction to who the basic characters are, but it also teases we don't know much about Leiningen, like the commissioner, when she does talk to him, because the commissioner turns out, I love how he's like, so I was your proxy in the wedding and also conducted the service. I hope our marriage goes well.
Yeah. No, I love when they do that. Like John and I, when we were writing, we talk about 89 Batman a lot. The introduction.
Ooh, yes.
Because that is a perfect example of, showing the backstory on Batman and who Batman is. It's 2 criminals talking about Batman, the Batman they call him, or the Bat or whatever. And it's a great scene for, just you know exactly what's going on. I mean, granted, 89 Batman's been established. We all know who Bruce Wayne is and all that stuff, but they do. Tim Burton or whoever wrote the script for that. That's a great example of just setting the scene right there.
Yeah, I mean, well, Casablanca, how you learn about Rick before you meet him, and it's sort of like everybody's like, well, and Matt and I talk a lot about exposition as ammunition, which is not, we didn't coin that phrase. That's like sort of 101, but like, but it's an easy thing to forget when you're trying to lay a lot of story pipe in the beginning. And I thought that particularly for movies where like they were made at a time where people watched them in a big theater, they weren't going anywhere, they weren't gonna like, you know what I mean, and they were probably being like, wow, look at how awesome this looks, so like you could kind of get away with a little bit more, but they still did it in terms of like sort of lazy type of writing. And they really, I thought they did a pretty cool job of like exposition as ammunition, particularly since you've got a long scene in like basically a master shot of like people just kind of like talking about the thing that's going to happen and why she's even. I mean, also I was like, God, it's got to be so hot in that outfit.
Oh, I know.
She's in that full dress with the God knows what, you know what I mean? And it's like, like I've been in the Amazon. It's hot. Like
one other thing to address in this movie, because I think that this is something really easy to miss unless we make the context. It says 1901 right at the beginning of the movie. For time period, so people know what that is. 1901 was the year Queen Victoria died. That's the year McKinley got shot, became president, got shot, and Theodore Roosevelt became president.
Okay, yeah.
That is the time era we're talking. So really, like, talking about the clothes is actually a perfect point on that, because those are not clothes that are meant to be comfortable. This is back when we still have Yankees wearing, I don't think the Yankees was a team back then, but like we're talking wool uniforms. We're talking, these are uncomfortable clothes. Like we have a few shots later in the movie where Charlton Heston's wearing his beautiful suit, but it's got like the ribbon tie, and that was normal. And it was normal to, we put on our suit for like dinner.
Right. Yeah, I love the idea. I mean, it said a lot about his character that he would, in the middle of the jungle, he would still dress to the nines for dinner. Like, and you get the sense that like he did that even when there were no other like Yankees there. You know what I mean? Like, very
and by the way, the New York Yankees, 1903. I just looked it up.
Thank you. So, hey, we're pre-Yankees.
Yeah, pre-Yankees. Probably the New York Trolley Dodgers were probably around, but or the Brooklyn Trolley Dodgers or whatever, but no New York.
So again, another thing that this scene does is it sets up that there's a looming threat, because she asks the commissioner, well, you're going to stop by? And he says, well, I have to keep on going because there's something out there in the jungle that needs investigating. And he's not going to say anything about it, but it is important.
The birds.
He was worried about
the birds, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because so like my dad's Brazilian, and so he would tell me stories as a kid about he's not from the Amazon, but like he would tell me stories as a kid of these ant invasions. And like and so it was like, I was very excited to see that be a plot because it was like such a they were like bedtime stories as I was a kid, when I was a kid, with these stories about the crazy invading ants that could eat a whole cow and 20, it's like the ants and the piranhas. That was like the main things that we talked about. And so like and I love the detail of like the birds are flying away and the thing, you know what I mean? Like it's like those sort of early signs. I was like, okay, this is going to be
good job
cool.
setting it up.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
they set it up on page 2 probably of the script. This is right there on the boat. He talks about the birds and yeah, when they're out later, it's like, oh, it's deathly quiet. It's the ants. Everybody wants to.
Yeah.
And so they get to they also drop out that she is 25 years old and she is coming from New Orleans, marriage by proxy. Again, the way they do it is she's like, well, you tell me what you know. And then he just rattles off facts. And you're like, that's actually, again, like for getting exposition out. But they give it just enough because they don't, a lot of the backstory for both characters is the revelation as we go through the story. Yeah. And also we find out that they're going to see that's the corner of his property. And she's like, oh, we'll be there soon. He's like, well, no, tomorrow. Just to give you like an idea of the scope of the range that he owns of land.
Exactly. Yeah. Also, at that time frame, 1901, New Orleans was like the richest city in America at the time. So if she's a socialite in New York, like that's one of the richer cities at the time. It's either New Orleans or Philly, I think, are the two richest for 1901.
So they arrive at the dock, and conspicuously absent is Leiningen. And they do again here, they're like waiting, they're building up for his appearance. And she's like, well, I thought my husband would come pick me up. And instead we get his number one man.
Love that guy.
Yeah.
So the main thing I noted in this scene was that, so she gets off, there's like this little boy that like gives her a stick, she gives him the umbrella, he walks her to the carriage, and then the number one man says, do you want to take him with you?
Yeah, do you want the kid?
He's like, won't his family miss him? They have plenty.
Yeah, he'd be happy to get rid of him. They get a good price or whatever. Like,
and then she's like, cool.
The casual nature of indentured servitude.
Well, I think but it was interesting, like, how they like in the Save the Cat type of screenwriting stuff, how like, within, I think it's like page 3 or something like that, you have the theme of the movie stated usually by a minor character. And like, I thought it was very interesting the way that they set up, the way that they sort of reinforced this theme of ownership. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like that's sort of the central thesis of the movie that's going to be debated. How much do you own? Like, can Leiningen really own the jungle? Can he own her? Like does he, is the native population his because he, quote, civilized them, even though their village had been around for 100 years longer than the United States at that point had even been around. You know what I mean? Like, oh, please civilize us, whatever. We'll get to that. But the point is that you have this this sort of thematic debate over like how can what can you really own something like that? I feel like, and it's like the ants become this great equalizer where it's like it's God, right? I mean, within the universe of this movie, it's God reminding you don't own anything. Like whatever.
And then it's the other theme with that is how the jungle, he keeps saying like, oh, everything rusts in the jungle.
The jungle corrodes everything.
Yeah, corrodes everything.
Except his virginity.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh man, the guy's an incel.
I mean, man, that's the thing. She's like, I speak many languages, but I don't speak
there.
But we don't want to. Yeah,
we'll get there.
Right. Sorry.
I'm so glad I'm not the only one that watched the movie and went, "Wow, okay then."
Yeah, amazing.
So we get to she arrives at the plantation. It immediately gives you like the scope of the place he owns. He's got parrots. He's got lots of servants. He gives her, she has the room, and instantly there's her personal servant, her number one girl.
Yeah.
And
super cute.
Yes.
It reminded me of Coming to America. You know, because he's got all these servants and they're just doing whatever they want. And I was just thinking, like, at the time, like, you don't know that he's, you know, a virgin, and I'm thinking like, with what's Eddie Murphy's dad. It's like, I always assumed that you fornicate with your bathers. I know I do.
The royal penis is clean, sir.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Totally, those vibes of Hakeem.
Yeah, it's like, and I was also like, oh, is he like a Kurtz type? You know what I mean? Like, is he somebody that like has really? But no, as we'll find out, he
has not.
His racism is so strong,
very, very strong.
I mean, it is incorruptible. You know.
Yeah, he came out into the jungle when he was like 19.
Yeah, he says he came out to the jungle. He's 19. I'm like, holy smokes. Yeah, I've read Errol Flynn's biography. That didn't last very long for him.
I mean, yeah, dude. Like, okay, so like he, well, when we meet him,
we'll get there. We'll get there because
we're too excited.
We're getting ahead of the story.
Too
excited. Unlike him, although I'll admit, like when he first sees her, he looks a little thirsty. So
he's been in the jungle for a while too.
He's been in the jungle for a while, but Line Engine shows up. Also, side comment on this, because so Line Engine shows up. He first says he doesn't want to see her when he's dirty. However, he shows up and he looks like primo Indiana Jones-esque.
All sweat.
Yeah.
All sweat, wearing that perfect jungle colonial shirt that has the epaulets on the side, and you're like, did they just steal that shirt for Indiana Jones? Because it does look like it. But I appreciate the continuity from Secret of the Incas. He's also wearing a scarf.
Yes.
Scarf is good, man. I love a scarf.
Yeah, I mean, Fighter Aces back. Well, actually, it's before the Wright brothers, because that was 1903 too.
Well, let it keep the bugs out.
Yeah, just keep the bugs off.
The sun
classic bandana fashion.
Yeah, exactly.
But he shows up, he walks in the room, and this was the thing I noted. I'm like, we established in Secret of the Incas that I like it when the screenwriters have a scene where the girl is wearing like the nightgown bodice thing. So did these screenwriters. They apparently had that thing too, because there are 5 different scenes where she is dressed that way for the sake of the movie.
I mean, it's
a lot of hot bodice action.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm on board with this.
You should do another romance novel, Bodice and Blades, and it could be
Bodice and Blades. Oh my goodness.
Sword fighting and bodices.
Oh my god.
You're joking.
Also an amazing
like, I feel the need to add this to my
I wasn't joking. You could take that. Yeah, I'll give it to you. You can take it.
We have audio proof when I publish this that
Bodice and Blades. They're like romance novel assassins.
Oh, they're like ninjas and bodices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like it.
I like this idea. They're like a secret. They're like the League of Assassins from Batman, except they're all gorgeous women.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, like ninjas in feudal Japan, the women were taught the art of seduction because that's how they would assassinate people.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we're not going on tangents at all in this case. But he shows up. I love the fact that they have the little thing where the servant girl looks at Heston and just giggles before she leaves. And so we then get the first interaction between Joanna and Leiningen, because we don't even know his first name is Christopher at this point in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't find that out until like he's like, they build him up like he's like Predator or something. Like he's like a horror guy. Which you don't see him until much later.
And part of that, I mean, it works because again, Heston, as we talked about this in American Secret of the Incas, he's a big guy and he looks it in the film. One of the things I made the note of in this scene is we really get the picture of Eleanor Parker's the perfect person cast opposite him, because she doesn't back down. It doesn't look like she flinches an inch when Heston's just in her face. being incredibly domineering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to know, like, it'd be great to be a fly on the wall of like the original script meetings and story meetings, like, because it seems like if this story were written today, they would have gone further with her character. Like, it's like the sort of the clues are there. She's from New Orleans. She is like, like she doesn't back down in the face of like an aggressive dude. Like, it's like there's more of a street element to her that I feel like they kind of backed off on. It's like she, like, somebody to put themselves in this position is probably out of options. In wherever they are.
Which in the film they say that or hint at it, but never go down that road, because that's instantly what Charlton Heston's impression is. He goes, "You are far too attractive to be here without there being a reason why you're here."
And she's friends with his brother, and like works with his brother or something like that. And so there's something there. I don't know.
You could follow those threads to some very interesting places, and then that would be a lot more for Lineagen to sort of like reconcile. That could be this would be a very interesting rewrite if people could get past the idea of a marriage by proxy through our modern lens, because the sort of interplay between the two of them is very interesting, and like they and she's got some great dialogue.
Amazing. Like, so I wrote down here, Heston says, "I don't like human or woman. You're just more than I expected." And she says, "If I study that for a while, I might find a compliment."
So good. So good. So good. I mean, yeah, she's really like, you can see where, okay, that's the same writer as Asphalt Jungle. That's somebody who's sort of been schooled in the you have these, like, Hitchcock would call them like pictures of people talking. Right. Like, when you have these sort of like longer bedroom scenes, so like a very easy way to tighten that up is to give people this kind of, for lack of a better term, like hard boiled dialogue or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's very cool to see. She's got some really, really cool dialogue, and it's cool that they gave it to her. Like, he's not coming off as particularly debonair.
He doesn't have, so whereas like when we watch Secret of the Incas, Heston has like some really good dialogue. I don't think he has that in this movie.
He's got some gravitas. Where people are attracted to him.
This film
comes off as a child.
So here's what I wrote down. He makes me think of Buzz from Toy Story, where everything is hyper serious. He is taking everything very, very life or death. He makes the stakes bigger than they are. He's the one being melodramatic.
I wrote down he's formal, like Dr. Polk, giving Polk vibes.
He does give Polk vibes.
Totally like how I envisioned Dr. Polk. And when we were talking about him, like, and we in Under the Knife, we have talked about Dr. Polk and how he wouldn't want to like have sex, like he wouldn't want, like, there, like later on there's like, he's like, "Oh, we will try to make children tonight," but it's like at this point he never even attempted, like, he's just like, he's too formal to even like have sex with his wife.
Yes, we will conceive in earnest.
Yeah, and that's like, and I was just like, oh man, he's totally Dr. Polk. He's like, he's super rich. He's got all these servants doing everything, and like, he's like, I mean, he's Dr. Polk's way more cultured and not as childlike, but he was giving some serious Dr. Polk vibes for me at this point.
That is an excellent call. So after that, they have dinner. We've established now they have conflict, that they aren't necessarily getting off on the best foot, but both of them are like trying to kind of make this work. He's suspicious, and they have dinner. And this dinner scene I loved because you have the picture of colonialism, a little boy with a string to pull the fan above your table.
So good.
Yeah, the kid she saved. It's just,
look, back when times were civilized. I mean, am I the only one that has to say it? When you had a human being pulling a string, so you were a little less hot.
At this point, I was like, I don't know, is he on a banana plantation? Because it wasn't this.
Yeah, it wasn't established at that point.
And you know, this was when United Fruit was, you know, and they came out of New Orleans and like where all the money came.
United Fruit.
Which, I mean, that is another little thread that makes more sense in the film, is because his brother lives in New Orleans. He's probably like his agent there.
He's the importer.
Yeah, for sure.
Honestly, after watching this movie, there was a small part of me like, I want the sequel, but I want it to be about his brother, who's also Charlton Heston, but like charismatic.
Yeah, his brother, or it's like Kirk Douglas, you know, like that would be his. I bet his brother is a real piece of work.
Oh yeah, in a seersucker suit, you know.
Yeah, his brother's like the fun one, you know.
Yes. I want the buddy cop movie with both of them. For like, because of the event of this movie, they have to go to New Orleans.
Yeah, everything's
like a fish out of water.
Yeah.
Guys, we should start. We need the pitch meeting. We need to start writing this.
It's a very fertile time period. You know?
Yeah, early 1900s is for sure. I mean, you got all these immigrants coming in from Europe too. I mean, my family, 1903 and 1907, the Italian side anyway. So it's like right around that time is, you know, that's a good time to be writing stories for.
Yeah.
So I made the note here. The Heston suit looks fantastic as established. He's wearing like this beautiful, well done suit. Again, it just makes him look bigger.
Yeah, I love that color, man. I love those kinds of stuff. That color suit is it might be my South American roots, but like I love that, like, you know, it's just a beautiful color. Like, you know.
She says the chicken was good, and I love how he's just, so she's trying to make conversation. He's basically saying nothing. He's just leaning across the table with like a cigar. And she says the chicken was good. And he says, it was lizard.
Yeah, and then he like
so good.
Crushed something with his hands, or he cracked his knuckle or something.
Yeah, he's like
cracking nuts.
Yeah, but he like crushed a walnut with his hand or something. It was lizard crush.
Yeah.
She says, I'm just trying to make conversation. He responds, why?
It's great.
Again, it does a great job building, again, the continual conflict between the two of them.
Yeah, and that frustration of I can't think of the word, but that frustration of sort of like, this is not the right word, but like, it's like something has interfered with his ability to own something. You know what I mean? So it's instead he has to sort of like convince himself that he doesn't want it. You know, like,
very cool. I don't think at this point he knows that she was married before.
No, not yet. So at this point, after dinner, he invites her into the room to play the piano. And this is, again, one of those excellent points where in dialogue by Robert McKee, he talks about trying to make a third object the point of the conversation, and everything else becomes subtext around that. And they use the piano as that kind of thing. They also discuss like about everything he has, and she accuses him of basically just wanting another ornament, and that's why she's there. And that's when he's like really starting to push here. He's like, this really isn't adding up. You are accomplished, you are gorgeous, there is no reason you are here in the jungle with me. So what is wrong with you? And that's when he starts insinuating that there was another man. And she goes, there was another man, my husband, who died. I told your brother that. And Heston immediately goes, ha, I found the thing. And he's like, my brother didn't tell me because he knows me better than that.
Right. And like, look, I think that this makes them, I think this makes the story better. Like, she's lying, right? Like I thought, I was like, oh, she's lying. She worked in a brothel, and that's how she met the brother, and that's why she came out. You know what I mean? Like okay. I was under the impression,
I mean, that wasn't the way I went, but that is a legitimate reading of.
Yeah, it's like I mean, yeah, like the thing. What I thought was going to happen, and this is pointless because it doesn't happen in the movie, but I started. So
yeah,
like what I thought was going to happen, because it's like, look. Yes, like high class ladies learn how to play the piano and all that stuff. But you know what else always has a piano in 1901? Is a brothel.
Yeah.
And like what people who have options don't do is go to the middle of the jungle to marry some weirdo that they've never met before. You know what I mean? And it's like, if his brother is like some big shot in New Orleans, chances are he gets around a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then she's like anyway, we'll but I was like, oh, this is really interesting. He's gonna have to reconcile the fact that she is a sex worker. You know what I mean?
And that's like, and that probably would have been what they went with if it wasn't this was during the Hays Code, right?
I was gonna say, I was honestly, so here's something I'd like to point out that's fascinating about this movie. Despite the fact this is during the Hays Code, their main conflict is the fact he's a virgin and she's not.
Yeah, and they do a really good job of
stepping around it. Yeah.
And she has that great line, really great line, where she's like, you know less about music than you know about women. A piano is always better when it's been played.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, that is a great line now. You
know
what I mean?
I also wrote down, he says, you know about men, and she says, more than you know about women.
Great.
Yeah.
Great lines.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. You know, it's really like, I mean, yeah, like the sort of like, that like, it was, I was like, oh, like, this is, I mean, she's given all the clues, he's giving all the clues. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah, like, if you get some guy that's just some whatever workaholic, you know, weirdo colonialist type of guy, and then you get some lady who's been married before, like, yeah, that's an interesting like conflict. But it's like, you get a virgin and a sex worker. That's just a much more interesting, like, you know, and maybe it's because we read and write too much pulp. So it's like, you always have to ratchet it up to 11, but it's like, that's a half measure. Mm-hmm. If it's, so I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like, she's a sex worker. This is really neat. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that's like, I imagine some writer initially pitched that, and they're like,
that was probably the initial pitch.
She was married before,
and then they just pulled it back.
There's decency laws we have to worry about.
Literally, the next comment I had was,
nobody would ever marry a sex worker. You know,
literally the next comment I had was, the impressive thing is they made the drama about sex, and with it not being the thing said.
Oh
yeah.
They were very good at that in that era, in making in all of those movies. They were very good at.
But I think that's what made a lot of those movies more interesting, is because they had to, because of the cues and the work that they had to go through, the hoops, it made it more interesting, versus it's the whole point of, are you being just too on the nose?
Yeah.
Whereas it's far too easy when you can to just be on the nose with it.
It made the dialogue way more interesting, for sure.
And like, I prefer either that style of like talking around it and playing around it and sexualizing other things, like a piano or whatever it is, or let's see some real, like, really realistic sex. Like, I can't stand it in movies when it's like somebody is having sex with a woman for the first time and they leave the bra on. No male in the history of maledom has ever, the first 300 times having sex with somebody, left, unless that's your thing. You know what I mean? Like, you know, if that's like, if everybody's got a thing, and if that's your thing, that's your thing. But like, dude, otherwise, no way. And it drives me nuts. It's like, okay, do the thing with the sheet, the strategically placed sheet. That's fine. You know what I mean? But like, I see a bra, like, it just takes me out of it, man. Like, you know, so either like talk around it, or let's fucking see something. You know what I mean? Like,
don't pussyfoot around it.
Yeah. And like, I don't need this. Like, it's not like, oh, this movie has a sex scene, let's check it out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not 10. You know what I mean? Like
checking Mr. Skin.
Mr. Skin. So they have their argument. She basically goes to her room. He goes back to the bar, and I love this visual cue, because he sets down like his small glass.
Oh yeah,
about to fill it, and then it closes close up on his hands and the glasses, and he pulls the big glass and then starts pouring into the big glass and goes glug 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 glug. Yeah. Chef's kiss. Gorgeous visual cue.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, snifter for that.
And then he rolls in there all
liquored
all hopped up, you know.
He wastes all of that perfume.
So
I mean,
that's something
Hollister.
We didn't mention earlier, but basically he asked, are you wearing the perfume I bought you? And she says no. And that's like the thing that's like eating him alive, apparently. Again,
well,
I
it's
think
great
that's
because he doesn't even know. He doesn't even know like it's like he probably didn't even bother to smell it.
No.
Yeah, exactly. I mean?
Yeah.
It's again, I like the fact that I didn't think about it before, John, but I think you're right. The theme of ownership really does go throughout this film. And this is just another aspect of that where
he's marking his territory like a dog. You know what I mean? Like,
But he doesn't even know his own scent.
He doesn't even know his own scent.
No.
So he breaks in, they have an argument. This is her in a nightgown scene 2. And in a moment, apparently, so I looked at the trivia for this movie. And apparently him throwing the perfume on her was an improvisation that Heston had as they were doing the film.
It was great. I mean, like, it was so...
I love that you had a tally for all the bodice scenes.
Oh, I did. As I'm watching this, I'm like, wait, how many times? Because like I've seen this movie before, but I didn't remember. I was like, wait a minute. We've got... Wow. Okay.
Well, yeah, you're going to be the Mr. Skin of bodices.
Apparently so. There'll be like
bodice blade.
There'll be a link like on terrenceleahy.com/bodice. There you can get the catalog of all the movies that we've reviewed that have bodices in them.
Mr. Bodice. You're gonna get the weirdest followers, dude. As somebody who worked at Playboy, I'm telling you, everything's a thing.
There would be like there is a version of like a Bond parody called Mr. Bodice somewhere out there.
Well, Mr. Bodice.
But really, like he's supposed to. It's set up like they write the story as if he's a spy, and then you find out he's just like the heir to the Bodice fortune.
Yeah, he's just
been trying to sell his product, and they've mistaken him for some secret agent.
Come, Mr. Bodice.
Yes, and the Bodice Ripper is the bad guy.
Bodice Ripper.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, well, that's what they call those romance.
Yeah, that's what they call those romance
Bodice Rippers.
Yeah.
Well, and okay, side comment. Like before I realized Swashbuckler was the name of the genre, I was like, what is the name of the genre of like pirate stuff? And some little lady at the library went, oh, they're called Bodice Rippers, dear. And I was like, oh, okay, like I guess I get it, like swords, bodices, whatever. And then I searched the term, I went, oh no, this is not what I meant.
She just outed herself. She's like, oh, you want pirates? Oh, I read a lot of books about pirates.
The number one thing about working at a local library is you learn far too much about people's reading tastes. When they borrow 50 Shades for like the third time, and you're like, ugh.
Well, just buy it at that point.
At that point, I know. Anyway, so that was an improv scene. I don't like. I'm fuzzy on what happens next. If anything happened in between, then he apologizes like the next day.
Yeah.
No, he apologizes during that argument. He apologizes afterwards and says, I shouldn't have done this.
Can I be a weird like film nerd for a second?
Go ahead.
You know how people are always looking for symbolism in movies, right? Like I'm not, if I like, I'm joking, but like the symbolism of a impromptu liquid release.
Oh yeah, he pissed on her. Yeah.
In that scene, well, but also
he means a different kind of liquid.
Well, yeah. It's like I was laughing because I love the score of the movie. I think the score is very good. And but I was like, I'm wondering if at one point they were like, how do we score a premature ejaculation? You know what I mean? Like, there's a couple of scenes where, like, again, if they were done today, they would perhaps be a little more explicit. But it's like remember, this guy, well, we don't know that, but I just thought it was very interesting.
Well, we kind of know that at this point now because he's pissed off that she's been married.
Yeah. I was gonna say. So here's where at this point in this argument, he like says, "I should send you away," and she says that his weakness is his pride, and then that's when he explains they have a term for men that go to the women of the jungle, and no one ever called me that.
Yeah.
Okay, so is the cat out of the bag about
the
his
cat is
state?
out of the bag
he is
at this point, that he is a virgin, and that
no, he's not an involuntary. He's just celibate at this point.
Dude,
yes.
like, this is amazing to me. It's like, okay, like, this guy came to the jungle at 19, spent 15 years in the jungle, learned the language, eats lizard, is like, knows all the customs, knows he's everybody like in the jungle, and never once thought about marrying a native woman. Now, maybe they didn't want to marry him. That's a different story. But otherwise, it's like that racism. Because then he was like, I wanted to start a family. It's like, bro, like, what? Like, so you imported a white lady to the middle of the jungle because you couldn't stand the idea of having a family with the people whose customs you've embraced, and you speak the language and eat lizard?
Yep.
Like, it'd be one thing if he only ate, like,
yeah, if he still was doing all the trappings of...
Right, he's like, I have Kentucky Fried Chicken brought in every week. Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, that's a different story. But, like, it's like everything else
he's
has
adopted everything else.
Yeah.
And he's got, I mean, his wife's number one girl right there. Cute girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like he's powerful. He's got all the things that like, if you're talking about this sort of like, this sort of preoccupation with ownership. Like, he's got all the things that would put him in a position where he could get laid. You know what I mean? Like if you can't get laid in his position, you can't get laid.
And he goes down there at 19. That's prime, like, breathing from your pants age right there.
Yeah, dude. I mean, like, I traveled a lot as a kid, and like, I didn't learn the language before I was trying to, you know what I mean?
You were using the universal language.
I was using, desperation. Yeah. You know, I maybe learned how to say like hello and like where's the bathroom, you know what I mean, and like how to order a cocktail, you know.
And by this point, we've also seen he's shown off the plantation. There's cocoa that they raise, and he's introduced some of the natives.
He establishes the levee or
establishes the dam, the levee there. Again, all great foreshadowing. And I agree. That's the thing that like feels the most hollow in this movie is like, dude, you've been here for 15 years and
15 years.
Yeah. Like, you're a red-blooded man, and it seems a little hollow, but again, this is drama, so it is what it is. The story is the story. But you guys are right, that's the surprising scene. But again, it works as a revelation. This is like the midpoint of the movie, right?
And I think
also the turning point where I start to like him after,
because he's starting to, and we discover this more in like the next bedroom scene.
Yeah,
that he's really a person, not just and he's always putting on a front is something you kind of start to realize.
Yeah, and he's afraid of people. Like he's afraid of what he considers to be people. Yeah. He's not afraid to order around people that through his power, weird value system he thinks are quote savages or whatever. You know, like I mean, like I agree. Like I was watching, I was like, oh, this movie is not flawed in the way that I was anticipating it to be. This character is. Yeah, and like that's cool. Like,
and that's the redeeming thing about this movie is that
he was great. He played the character really well. You're like, oh, he's not just like kind of an a-hole. Like he's nuts. Yeah. And, you know, like
you're 19 and you go to the jungle. Like I would like at 19, I was like, I'm not going to the jungle to, you know, that's it.
Because it never quite answers that question, because they established the question for her. She's 25 and attractive. What's she doing here, marrying someone she doesn't know?
Well, 25, ancient.
Exactly. Spinster.
In 1901. Yeah, Jesus. Spinster.
At his age, at 19, going off to the jungle, that's not atypical. Adventuring, yes, for like a year, but not I build my plantation and stay here.
Yeah, not that level of ambition. And so it's like, oh, like there was a missed opportunity, and I guess it's in the subtext because we're talking about it now, but like it's like they actually have a lot more in common than they initially seemed like they did, because he must have been running from something. whether it was poverty, whether it was the law, whether it was like whatever it is, but that level of like just absolute ambition and sort of planning is so atypical. Yeah, for a young, for even in 1901 or whatever it is. Because 1901, 19 is like 40. But
but if you're going
still,
like at that age, like okay, so 1901, 15 years before that, so you're talking when there's like the Klondike rush, like the gold rush in up in the Klondike and in Alaska and all that area. Like if you're going anywhere at that age for money, you're going for gold. Like you're not going to go and get cocoa, like be a cocoa.
You're not
farmer.
building a business. You just want to get rich quick.
Yeah.
Whereas he actually builds an empire.
Yeah.
Like there's a version of this movie that's like Narcos, where we're getting like him building the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and like it's like I don't know enough about the history of that region during the time that he would have come out, but was he a soldier who went AWOL, or was he like part of a whatever, or some kind of merchant, whatever, like there's an interesting story, and it's like okay, well, where my mind goes from a pulp standpoint, of course, is like he was running from something the same way that she was running from something, and that's the reason why it's like game recognized game. He's like, no, there's something more to it. Take it from me, somebody who went into the middle of the Amazon at 19, like before I'd even gotten laid.
I mean, okay, so 15 years prior, we're still we're in the antebellum age.
Yeah.
And if he's from the South.
Yeah, so he would have been, so it would have been so ingrained that you
Well, I was actually more thinking that like again, we're writing more than there, but like he came from a Southern family that lost everything in the war.
Oh, yeah.
Fair point. Yeah, well, that's really good, because then it's like, oh, he would recreate the one thing that he understands.
Yeah.
A plantation that subjugates a population. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, well, that makes a lot of sense. That's really that I think you're correct. Yeah.
So we also
discovered, it would have been the shame of losing everything, the whole.
Yep. And again, he has like he has a Southerners type of attitude towards like how he lives around his home. But he has this Brinkman style negotiation that we get immediately after this, where the commissioner shows up, and there's the other plantation owner Gruber, who he's like, 3 of my men, you took them. And he's like, I don't take anyone. They just come and work for me. Not my problem. And he's like, well, let me look through the men. And then he knows which ones worked for him because they have scars on their backs. And which, again, for the context of this movie, it's an interesting way that they're also displaying the fact that while Leiningen is a demanding man, that he doesn't abuse his employees the same way as Gruber.
It's a great detail.
So it's a really good little detail without having to tell you, it shows you.
And this is kind of the turning point where he you start to kind of like him a little more. Before he's just this weird guy who beats his wife, and now he's at least he's nice to his indentured servants, I guess, at this point.
However, he does say that, so Gruber wants to take them back with him, and he says, no, they work for me. He's like, they stole. I would rather they were hung than go.
They killed him, man. It was the shrunken head scene.
Which we saw that scene ahead of time in the movie, where the guy, again, this is one of those weird moments where you're like, what are you trying to tell me about other cultures, movie? We watch as a man is basically speared to death, and he's like trying to defend himself on top of this tower, and the lady's like, this is barbaric. And she's like, you're heartless for letting this happen. She tells the number 1 man this, who has allowed all of this. And then you find out it was the number 1 man's son.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, that was good. It was also, it's like the Jovitos with the dart, like the guns and stuff like that. There's a lot of Jovitos vibes in this, bringing in the Indiana Jones influences.
And so he's like, fine, we'll hang them. And he literally has them throw the ropes over, puts the ropes around their necks. Commissioner's just watching. waiting to see what happens. And Leiningen has them pull, and he's like waiting for the commissioner calls it off. He's like, if I thought that you were actually going to do this, I wouldn't have let you. And he's like, and I knew you wouldn't let me. And it's his way of preventing them getting taken by Gruber, basically, is what it comes down to at the end of the day. But the look on the guy on the right, I don't know if you guys clocked it, but his eyes as they're like putting the rope on are like,
yeah.
The other guy's like,
that was a good stunt too. Like that looked like a pretty it looked pretty real, you know, like I don't know, maybe it was.
Yeah, I don't know, like, because they didn't have shirts on, they had nothing to, like, I don't know.
Yeah, it was a cool stunt. Like, well, I love to like the way I was taught was like you kick the dog while you save it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, not. I mean, I know these are people, but like, what, you know, but that was the way that the technique was named. Mm-hmm. By the people that taught me. So it's like, it's not enough to like just save the cat as it were. Like, it's like you kick it while you save it. That mm-hmm. makes the character more interesting. Mm-hmm. You know, probably the most obvious example would be the first episode of the one with Kevin Spacey where he's the political.
Oh, House of Cards. House of Cards, where, spoiler alert, you know, he where he kills the dog to save it from pain or whatever. Like, you're like, oh, okay, like this is this guy's moral code. Mm-hmm. And like, you know, I thought that was a real interesting choice. It was a little late for me mm-hmm. for Leiningen in the movie, but it was a cool choice. You know, it's like they're kind of rebooting Leiningen in the middle of the movie. You know, like, well, and I think they're doing it in a convincing way. So like we just did an episode on McKenna's Gold, which was a fun movie, but the thing that really, I say fun, it was fun to talk about later. It had a few moments, but generally miserable slog. But in that movie, Omar Sharif, like at the beginning of the movie, they set him up as he is literally kidnapped and raping a woman. He is like very, very bad guy. But instantly in the movie, they're like, but he's also really fun and charismatic, and you want to like him.
He's our guy.
Without a reason.
Yeah. Who doesn't have some problems?
Whereas in this movie, they do go through the motions of we've introduced Leiningen as like the worst person on earth. Mm-hmm. And now we're slowly revealing that there's more to him.
Yeah, 2.0.
Yeah. Well, but that's it's interesting you bring that up, because it's like the way that they established the point of view from the beginning is that, like, and this might be why she got billing over Charlton Heston. I don't know how big of a star she was then. She looks like she was probably quite a sex symbol at the time. Mm-hmm. But like, you're seeing, like, we are learning. This is like the most obvious thing I could possibly say, but you're learning about him at the same rate that you're learning about that she is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're in her perspective.
Yeah, it's always her point of view.
She's our entry point into this world. Yeah. She's the character we're following, the character that gets introduced in the, like, I don't know how you guys feel about this when writing some things, but like I was saying down the other day and writing something, and I'm like, do I introduce a character to like have be the one that everything gets told to make the exposition easier? Yeah,
it's like, I like starting a story with, like, it's like if you're doing like a workspace, it's like their first day on the job, so they get to they learn everything, they meet everybody, and you're kind of following that person. But I just looked up Eleanor Parker. This could be also why she was top billing. She was nominated for 3 Academy Awards at this point.
She deserved it.
Two at this point. Just nominated, though, for Cage 1950 and Detective Story in 1951.
I want to watch more movies with her.
Detective Story?
Yeah, I don't think Heston was ever nominated at this point. I don't.
Well, I don't know. Ben-Hur was, if he was in Ben-Hur beforehand.
Oh, Ben-Hur before. Yeah.
That's the big one. But the point is, this movie may have been made prior to the release of it, if this was more schlocky. And that always happened, because like I was looking at the poster and they're like, hero of Ben-Hur, and you're like, I wonder if that was something added post.
Yeah,
right.
So the commissioner is back, and he's there for dinner between Leiningen and Joanna, and I think again it's a good like we were just talking about, having that third character in the room, someone that's new to see things. It's because we see from their point of view. And the commissioner is getting to watch Jin and his wife, and he's like, oh, this is not going very well. And he's the side on their argument. They have a bit of a fight, and Jin says she'll be leaving soon. She finds the jungle doesn't agree with her. And she's like, that's not the reason. And she starts going, he's like, he doesn't need to know. And she goes, I think the commissioner would want to know that I'm not leaving here because I don't like the jungle. And you have more argument. She leaves. And then the commissioner is kind of like, Jin, what the fuck are you doing?
He's like a Greek chorus. He's what we're all thinking, like, you're an idiot.
And so he's like, I see what happens to you year after year. I've known you a little while now, and you're getting worse. I think she could help you. Jin's like, we're not talking about this. And he's like, if you want to talk about something, we're talking about something else. And then the guy shuts up, and he's like, well, don't you want to talk about something else? He's like, I don't want to talk to you at all. And then he brings up the reason he has to keep going. He turned around from his mission that he told Joanna about at the beginning of the movie. And so now he has to go back because there are more reports, and he needs to investigate what's going on in the jungle. And he begins to whisper a word that we don't yet understand in the film, but it might be the marabunto.
Yeah, I had Maragunta, but
Marabunta,
yeah, the Maraguta. Yeah, I like that scene. It's like just like two power brokers in the region.
He's the closest thing he has to a friend, is what we figure out.
Yeah.
Because who's going to go to Gruber? That guy? Guy's clearly an asshole. I mean, Heston's an asshole too, but not as bad as Gruber. I mean, Gruber's
no. Yeah. Well, for one, Gruber's got a German name. Which is never good.
He's probably Hans
he's Hans's grandfather, obviously.
Jin is a German name, and this story was actually originally published in German.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I'm guessing Gruber is just because it's
And he's Hans Gruber's grandfather.
Hans Gruber's grandfather.
That's
canon for Die Hard.
That family tree is just poison. Terrible.
And this is where I clock that the screenwriters had the thing for same. Apparently, the screenwriters have the same thing for nightgowns as I have, because we have reached the third nightgown scene, and it's basically when he's apologizing to her for what he did. He's like, I still think it's best that you leave. And he sees that she's reading poetry. And I loved this scene because we introduced for the first time, he says his name is Christopher. This is the first time we actually know that. And she asks him to fix the door. And that's when he says, oh, the jungle corrodes everything. It swallows everything up, sometimes even men. And he basically says, I get this isn't your fault. This is my fault. I'm really just a cruddy guy. And I'm probably going to keep becoming a cruddy guy. So you're really better off leaving. But he tries to tell her that he bought the books by weight.
Yes.
Right.
And she looks at it and goes, the person that bought this book didn't buy it by weight. It's because they picked it. And I think that you picked it. She calls him out on being not as bad as he tries to be. What's the line? She says, he says there are three men, every man is three, who he projects himself, who he thinks of himself, and how he really is. And she asks, well, which am I talking to now?
Yeah, he's I like that scene too. I just wrote they nerd out about books, which but I didn't catch, what was the book? Did she say, they mentioned the book of poetry? Because I didn't catch it if it was.
She says it was poetry, and she did say the name, but I didn't
catch it either.
It wasn't someone like well known.
Yeah, but this is, and like John said, I mean, it's a little late in the game for these types of scenes. But I guess if we're following Eleanor Parker's character throughout this, I guess it's not too late for Heston. But yeah, this would be typically a scene that you would have much earlier in the movie. And I mean, it's a short flick, but I mean, you would have that a lot earlier.
Yeah, it's it's cool. I mean, Charlton Heston, like I didn't think he was. I mean, he was very Charlton Heston in Secret of the Incas, and so it's like he was very much his movie star in that movie. But I thought that his performance in this movie was much more nuanced and like, I don't really think of Charlton Heston as like the most nuanced performer, generally speaking. I thought this was one of his more like, you're like, man, I'm on board. Like,
he
had a lot of guts to play a character that was like weirdly pathetic. Like, I mean, effective as in doing whatever it is that he did on a daily basis, but like an effective ruler or whatever, but like not actually a very like kind of a weirdo,
Oh, big time weirdo.
Like a rich weirdo.
Dr. Polk. He's Dr.
Yeah. It was funny. I was thinking like when certain this is unfair. I don't know the man. I probably will never know the man. But like during some of like the dinner scenes and the piano scenes where he's like, play it. And she's like, what would you like to hear? He's like, I know nothing about music. And just play something. It's like, I was like, is this what it's like to date Jeff Bezos? You know what I mean? I mean, again, not fair. I don't know the guy. I'm sure he's great.
Pop culture meme wise, yeah.
But like, yeah, right.
So I've read a biography on Heston, and I think what's fascinating about watching this role is he was, generally speaking, like no more racist or sexist than anyone else at that time, which I know doesn't say a whole lot, but still he was a little bit more progressive. He was originally a stage actor for Broadway. And well, not Broadway, but he did stage acting in New York.
Yeah,
he was like a serious actor. Yeah. And basically he was lured out to Hollywood to star in a few of these roles, and he just kept getting cast. So like a movie like this probably appealed to his sensibilities more because this was far more stagey in a lot of ways. It wasn't like Secret of the Incas where you're trying to be the big hero. He got to give like an actual acting.
Yeah. Well, it's also, I mean, like even for a big movie star, like there are roles, like there's that old cliche that like everybody has at least one role that they'd be brilliant in. You know what I mean? And I like oh God, what's his name? Elmer Gantry, Sweet Smell of Success.
Oh yeah,
Burt Lancaster.
Yeah,
like I like Burt Lancaster. He can be a little big sometimes in terms of his gestures, but like in Sweet Smell of Success or Elmer Gantry, it's like the roles really work because they are these demonstrative role. And like with this Charlton Heston, like this sort of like ultra macho kind of compensatory macho-ness that like Heston's really good at, but then you have these like sort of peeks behind the curtain. I thought it was really cool. Like I liked it more than I even wanted to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
it's an effective movie. So he tells her, he basically says, you'll be happier with your own kind, is his rationale. And then, excuse me as I silence my phone. I should just turn it off when I do an interview, shouldn't I? You'd think I'd be a professional by now. Why bother? Dia said. But he tells Joanna, I'm going to, rather than waiting for you to eventually leave when the boat goes back, we'll just go with the commissioner and drop you off at like the village, and I'm going to go with him to investigate this thing. And he doesn't tell her what it is, but he says it's not great. And this is that scene where, John, your comment about it's hot in the jungle really feels accurate, because they get in the boat and they're on the boat and you see her. He made a comment, you probably shouldn't dress that way. She's like in the full 1901 going out on the town gown, and he's wearing like shorts, and she's just sweating on the boat. Like,
oh yeah.
And he stands there and he's wearing the hat, and he just kind of looks at her like, shouldn't have done that. And she then stops just to like not give him the satisfaction.
Yeah, I love her stubbornness. It's great.
Yeah, no, it's great. It reminds me of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom with
with Willie.
Yeah, with Willie. Yeah. Sorry, you were going to say something. I cut you
I was
off.
going to say, so they have that line that's the stubbornness line that comes up next. They get out of the boat, and
Oh, yeah.
immediately
Great
I
line.
thought Indiana Jones Temple of Doom, because they get into off the river to this little campsite. She steps, she's wearing this white dress, and I'm like, never a great idea. And the native is walking by, then drops the sack into the puddle that splashes the mud up on the dress. And she's like, and then she's like, I'm gonna soldier on, steps into the mud puddle and loses her heels and keeps walking. And that's when Heston's like, she's stubborn. And the commissioner says, yes, thank goodness that's not a quality either of us men possess.
Yeah. I also liked when the commissioner was like, she hasn't complained once. Like he was just like, by the way, like she hasn't complained about at all about, like, she's sweating her face off and she's all muddy and she has not complained one bit. And here you are bitching that about what she's wearing. You clown. You know.
The line was, she's stubborn. Yes, a terrible fault. Thankfully, we don't suffer from it. And then they make camp. This is the final nightgown scene in the movie, clocking at number 4. And I forgot about this scene. And I say that because I went, wow, this is actually far more of an intimate moment between the characters than I realized.
This is a great scene.
This is such a great scene. She asks him he gives her bug ointment. Like, you put this on, it'll keep the bugs off. And she says, will you put it on for me? And then what makes it even better is the fact that she like held up her, like the towel basically over her chest at start, but she still like then turns her back and like drops the thing. It's well done. It's well choreographed, and the looks they give each other. My first thought was, this is kind of like when a guy says, dear, do you want a back rub?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, this is another example of her being a seasoned vet with men there. And he's got his hands full. And I mean, back to John's point about, her past as a potential prostitute, and because that's somebody who knows, she knows how to manipulate guys in that.
Right. He also, I don't want to be vulgar, but he absolutely ejaculated in his pants in that scene.
When you see him walk outside of the tent afterwards, the look on his face.
He 100% came in his pants. Like, that scene is so funny. Like, it's, I don't know, you guys gotta watch season 1 of Eastbound and Down when he's like, and she's like, did you just ejaculate? No, I just made a moral decision. We shouldn't do this. You know what I mean? And it was like that scene, except played totally straight. But that was the scene I was trying to say earlier, was like, I can imagine the orchestra being like, how do you do a sting on a premature ejaculation? Because he absolutely did.
A tuba?
You've been a virgin. Because he's what now? Like, what is he?
You give me like 35 or something?
34, 35, something like that. Never had sex before, and like is like not pawing at the indigenous women, you know what I mean? Which is like wild to me. But and then suddenly is touching this like really hot lady, you know what I mean? Like,
and looking at him with the biggest bedroom eyes.
Oh my god, yeah. And she's like, yeah, you're probably gonna have to get this one out of the way, buddy, because this,
rubbing that terrible mosquito ointment,
again, just the look on his face. He steps outside that tent is just like, what?
Yeah, it's so embarrassing.
My first thought was, is he going through post-nut clarity right now?
Yeah. I really think he's like, I don't know, does this count? Does this count?
So that's what that's like.
Yeah, he can't call his buddies and be like, did I cross the line? Did this count?
The hell's this stuff?
This only happens when I dream. Am I asleep?
So she goes to sleep. Drink some water. She goes to sleep. She has the mosquito netting on, and all of a sudden, middle of the night, she wakes up, And she steps outside the tent, and I love the look that Heston has standing out there. I was like, this looks like he's like posing for some kind of like men's quarterly magazine as he's like leaning against a tree branch, his shirt like unbuttoned down to his navel.
This one's for the ladies.
I'm like, in his contract, was he like, listen, Byron, director, I need one scene where I'm not quite wearing my shirt and I look really sexy.
Oh, I'm sure the studio wanted that. I mean, like they did that.
This was the lady shot.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, they in Cool Hand Luke, the studio kept ordering reshoots of certain close-ups of Paul Newman because they were too dark and they couldn't see. And then finally, they had to be like, listen, the women want to see his blue eyes. Just lighten the shot so we can see his blue eyes.
Paul Newman, for black and white. That movie was black and white. Why would they?
Well, yeah, no, not Cool Hand Luke. Cool Hand Luke was color.
Oh, was that color? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was black and white.
It was like that gritty, like kind of like you know.
That so the color. Other note,
but that was the thing is they were shooting it that way, and they're like, look, we can't see the blue. Just in this shot, we need his blue eyes. And enough with your cinematic bullshit, you know.
Let's get to the point of the movie. We cast Paul Newman because we want blue eyes.
Cast Paul Newman. Women love
the religious symbolism that he's Jesus.
Yeah. Paul Newman, shirt off, blue eyes. Go.
I made the note, if this was a Marvel movie, this would be the scene where Hemsworth is like, his shirt's off and he's glistening in oil.
Yep. Worth the price of admission.
Deirdre, are you sure you want to go watch The Naked Jungle again? Yes, I am.
Yeah. It's for the ladies.
And so this is where the commissioner, who is not undressed and looking sexy, is also standing there. He's like, "Hi guys, I'm here." And he's like, you woke up? She's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "We did too. It took us a few minutes to realize what it was. Everything's silent. For a jungle to be silent." It was a very effective like demonstration of what's happening. And Heston, in one of the most masculine moments of this movie, goes,
true Charlton Heston NRA moment.
Yes. He just takes out his gun, says, "There's one way of finding out what's going on." He fires the gun like twice in the air, and still stone cold silence.
Right.
He like empties his gun.
Because I mean, if you're talking about cinematic symbolism, I don't want to bring it back to the bodice scene.
Yeah, he finally gets a shot. He gets his shot off in the.
Yeah. You know.
So he says, "Isn't there a village over there? Where can we get to? We're going to stop going by water. We're going to go by land." And they find the deserted village. No one's there. He's like, "It looks like they left in a rush." And then there's a boat that floats down. No one seems to be in it. They grab the boat. In it is a perfect skeleton with the clothes and weird little hat thing that Gruber was wearing. Thus, we now know why he was in the movie and why he had a little hat with a funny little red thing on it.
It looks like the Pirates of the Caribbean ride.
Yes.
You know, we're like, so good.
At this point, I believe we know they're ants.
Mm-hmm.
And we find out later how they did it, but I was like, how the hell did they get to this guy on a boat? They're ants.
Okay, we will get to that. Let's hold that nugget because later. It's so good. It's so good. So they go up the river farther, and Lineagen wants to leave her there, basically. And the commissioner doesn't want her to doesn't want to take her, and he says, "We have to take her." She's like, "Well, we can leave the natives with her." And he's like, "We leave the natives with her, she'll be alone in 5 minutes." And so they all go, and that's when they see it swarming over the hills. Ants.
So good.
And that's when they explain what this is. We don't know why, but every now and again, these soldier ants just come up out of the ground and they devour everything in its path. And Lineagen's like, "They're heading towards my plantation." And then they get there. Commissioner's like, "I have to go tell everyone." He's like, "Come on, let's get going." He's like, "No, I'm staying." He's like, "You're crazy. You're not staying. You can't do anything to stop them." That's when he like says the line, I love it. He's like, you can't stop them. They're organized. They have soldiers. They have legions. They have generals. They will strip your plantation bare.
They
and
are
Lion
very
says,
organized animals.
I'll fight them. And he's trying to send Joanna off with him, with the commissioner, where she'll be safe. And she says, but if you send me away, all of your servants are going to leave because they know there's danger. If I stick around, they'll believe the danger can be stopped. Good strategy there. Like,
pretty good. That's
pretty
ride or
good.
die, man.
It makes sense. I mean, it's realistic. I mean, that makes sense.
And then he summons all of his natives to the house to basically give them the pep rally. We will stop this. And then when they leave, she's like, do you think it worked? He said, well, it will. I burned their boats.
Yeah.
Great. Who was the conquistador that did that? It was like
Cortez.
Leon?
Yeah. In when they conquered the oh Jesus, the Incas, right?
Yeah, the Incas.
Yeah, I don't know. You know what? I'm gonna just
history.
Go ahead. I'm gonna look. I know in history that happened at some point. It's been in a bunch of books. Mm-hmm. That's the extent of my knowledge and ignorance.
So he burned the boats. They can't leave. And then they start on their ambitious project. He's going to carve a moat around the house, around the plantation, and that they're going to fill it with the dam, the levee. He has a full battle strategy on what they're going to do. They're getting brush set up all around the house. They figure if they make it across the dam, we can burn everything, and that will kill them off.
This is the Home Alone, get the house ready for the wet bandits.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love how when he's like, I pulled them out of the jungle. They're talking about his like people that work for him. It's like I pulled them out of the jungle and like basically civilized them. And if they go back in the jungle, it'll all be for nothing. It's like
they'll be savages.
Savages. Their village has been around longer than the United States. Like you gave them jobs, but like, you know what I mean? Like I've worked for a lot of companies that have gone under and like I didn't become, you know what I mean? I just went back to being the same dude I was. That's all that's going to happen with you're their boss. Like they work there.
Yes.
That's it.
And I love how he tries proposing at the beginning of the movie when he's showing her everything on the plantation. He's like, they were once the Mayans and had this great civilization that just collapsed.
Yeah.
And they were nothing but barbarians in the jungle. You're like, but like you've never demonstrated how you've made their lives anything other than what they'd have living in the jungle, besides the fact that they're employed.
Yeah, and yeah, their civilization collapsed because we brought like the Europeans disease. That's all.
Yeah, it didn't just like something. There was a contributing factor.
Good, conveniently ignore all that for the sake of the movie. Yeah, and basically, this is the moment where, after they've started all the preparations, Lion Engine finally gives in to his impulses.
Yeah,
about time.
When I first watched this movie, I honestly could not. When I went to rewatch it, I could not remember if they actually do it or not.
Well, yeah, it's. I mean, yeah, it's.
I mean, she probably, like, she probably feels the same way. You know what I mean? Like, it's probably not memorable for her.
Probably not.
I mean, it takes a few,
Yeah.
So I had the note: Joanna and Christopher finally get together, and then the ants have arrived, and they are stymied by the water. Matt, would you like to explain how the ants overcome the water?
It's amazing how genius these ants are. They cut leaves off the trees and use little leaves as boats to go across the moat, and it's ingenuity at its finest. I love that scene. I was like, oh my god, leaves! Like I wrote leaves ! Underneath the Gruber, like how the hell did they get to Gruber? It was hilarious. That was one. Like I love that scene. I love every scene with the ants. It was so funny.
And the guy that's been operating the moat, they're like, flood the moat. But the guy that's in charge of it, he was asleep on the job. Do you know what happens when you sleep when there are army ants with little boats of leaves nearby?
That's when you need a job done in a movie, you don't pick the portly guy.
No.
All I thought was this is the guy who is definitely like cast off the island.
Yeah, he was always sweating, like, and he was just a sloven man, and it's like, yeah, we're gonna give you the job. Like
you figure you don't move very quickly.
No. You want the guy that's chewing coca leaves, you know what I mean? All
wide
hopped
awake,
up,
yeah,
just watching. You know what I mean?
Wild-eyed, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you want that guy.
Yeah, you don't want some schlub.
No, you want a guy with a big lip of coca, just
So slovenly guy gets eaten by the ants, and actually they kind of show as much as they can as the ants are swarming up his body, and slowly he's falling, and the ants, you like see they turn his hand like a different color as the ants are starting to consume him.
It's kind of like the Wicker Man with the bees, but not as dramatic.
And I also wrote, you've got to admire the natives, like literally beating the ground with shovels and bamboo and whatever to try killing the ants. And I'm like, that seems like the most fruitless of actions you could possibly be taking at this point.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Charlton Heston gets on a horse and rides away. That's all these guys.
Just like, thanks for burning our boats.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So John?
Oh, I was saying, you mentioned the Wicker Man. Nick Cage would be amazing in a remake.
Oh my God,
yes.
Yeah. Nick Cage for sure.
We'll get into actually recast for today in a minute once we're done with this. But so he's made it back to the house. They light everything on fire. Joanna wakes up the next morning and everything's gone. Like everything in the house that could be burned has been burned. Line engine. We have seen that he has thrown away basically everything that he has created, that he has made this as his home to try saving the thing. And it still hasn't worked. And he's like, I thought I would have a family to inherit this. Instead, the ants get it. And he like throws the little beaker that had the ant against the giant map of the plantation.
Great. I love that part.
Yeah.
He looks incredible in that scene.
Yeah.
And he's like, I have one more thing we can try. He's like, Joanna, I'm sorry. You did not think any of this was going to happen. Like, I was bad enough, and now they're army ants. And she's like, but I'm going to stick with you. And he hands her a gun, and she's like, what's this for? And he goes, for you.
Not for shooting ants.
Not for shooting ants. He's like, I have one last thought. He's like, he had earlier established that he had created the dam to like cut out where his place is. It used to flood. Now it doesn't. He's like, what the river gave me will go back to the river. And he's going to blow up the dam and flood everything. And if that doesn't work, nothing will work. And he gets out there, he slathers his body in like, I think it's technically supposed to be gasoline, but basically something that's going to try to keep the ants off.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious because he's got dynamite and a cigar.
Yes.
And putting gasoline all over himself.
Yes.
And I was just waiting for him to look like a protesting monk. At the end of this film.
And he gets there, he places the dynamite, the ants are swarming over him. I'm like, this is actually like pretty good physical comedy almost. Like Charlton Heston is like beating his body, trying to keep the ants off. I was like, that hat looks like the least useful thing to be wearing at this point because it's got the wide brim and the ants can just like hover around it and like there's more surface area for them to get around. But anyway, he runs there, he places the dynamite, and then he uses his gun to fire and light the dynamite. Which great scene. Again, it looks epic. It's a great shot. And then he starts running and he tries to get out of the trench only to realize that that's actually worse than it's worse to get on mainland at this point. And then boom. and the water comes running down. And again, I think for like a little practical effect shot, I'm guessing they use models. It actually doesn't look bad.
For sure. The models look great. Speaking of the comedy, the practical comedy, like if I was, I just keep thinking like if I was on set for that, I would have to go for like I gotta walk away from like I'm laughing, like I'd be laughing the whole time. So my ants, oh my god, like
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that must have been a huge acting challenge. Like,
yeah,
it's like on set, you're like, is this gonna play?
Yeah, exactly. Like yeah, as an actor, like, okay, and the director's just like, okay, now the ants are in your hair. Get it in the hair.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. Like
the directions he was getting. And so it floods and it stops the ants. And then like the scene that you get that's like the end of the movie is her running out to find Charlton Heston, who has managed to survive. And the implication is that they're going to rebuild his plantation. And again, they have a beautiful matte shot in the background of everything that's been devastated and destroyed.
Yeah, and then a lot of the indigenous workers are coming back. It's like the family unit is coming back together. It's really, really great.
I genuinely like, again, so I think the first question for you guys is, did you like this more than Secret of the Incas?
I did.
Yeah,
I liked it.
Yeah, definitely. It was a way better movie.
Yeah. Which on the surface, like I said, like I went in like, I don't know, ants, I don't know. And I enjoyed it a lot more than Secret of the Incas. Yeah.
So this film actually, like you mentioned the radio program, that this was like a really popular short story. I think it was published in Esquire. And then it like, people loved it. That's why really they did the radio drama. Like it was really popular. So when they got the chance to make this movie, they were like, hey, we are making this movie. The major decision was to change it from the name Lion and Jin the Ants to making it The Naked Jungle, because they thought that was going to sell better. Today, I actually think it plays worse, but that's...
Well, at the time, you had the Naked City, you had Asphalt Jungle. Like, I just, like, it was like almost like they were mixing two film noirs together. But yeah, I just looked up the short story was published in 1938 in Esquire, so that's like that time frame fit, and that time frame fits with Indiana Jones, because that's around when he was the
30s.
Yeah.
So one of the main contributions this movie had to Indiana Jones was, besides the fact that Heston looks a lot like Indy in a lot of scenes, there's also the fire ants in Crystal Skull, which honestly I'd forgotten about, but apparently that was the inspiration.
Okay. I thought the opening shots reminded me a lot of the opening shots of Raiders with the Jovitos, that like, well, not the opening shots, but when he's
with the natives
going out to Chuck in the plane, it looked very similar.
And the scenes with poor Joanna at the little campsite as her clothes are getting ruined by the camping. Again, very reminiscent of Indy and Willie in Temple.
And Romancing the Stone. I mean, I feel like that's such a trope.
Beautiful
we
trope.
About that in Secret of the Incas too. That kind of scene is a huge bodice ripping trope.
So go ahead, John.
Well, I thought it was an interesting choice to take a story that was that popular and that sort of action, or because it's essentially like a siege story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like a home invasion thriller, but like
with the Alamo.
But to take a story that was that popular for that reason, and then to make that just the third act, and to give it this really long first act.
Yeah.
That's like this sort of like weird courtship.
Yeah.
And like it was really like a romantic drama in a lot of ways. And like, I mean, I'm sure they must have done whatever market research they had done at the time, and they had made that decision based on their knowledge of the audience. But like, looking at it without any of that context now, I was like, oh, this is a really interesting choice. Like, to have that slow of a burn when people know, like, if it was a popular story, you know what I mean? It's like it's like very like
it's like two films, and it's only an hour. It was only like
hour and a half.
I want to
say an hour and a half. They got a lot in.
Yeah.
I think so. This is my guess, and obviously I'm just speculating. If the story was popular enough, they knew what everyone was there to see and wanted to see, and that's why you hang on till the end. But they also need to give it something different because there wasn't enough meat on the bone. So creating like this very stagey drama that surprise people because they didn't come in expecting it.
Right. That's what happened to me. I mean, I thought it was just going to be a really long version of Lion versus Diane's, you know, which I was like, how are they going to spread? I mean, that's a long, you know, how are they going to spread this out? But
it's a swarm.
Apparently,
it's a large swarm.
Yeah.
Are you guys going to watch the movie again? Would you watch the movie again? I guess is the next question.
I would listen to the score, like like in my car or something. I like the score a lot.
Yeah, I would watch it again. I would probably like the first half was a little slow, but I would I'd watch it again. The score was excellent. Yeah.
I'd maybe do the middle school thing where I just fast forward to the bodice scenes. Yeah. You know what I mean?
No, that's how I'll rewatch the movie next. If let's say in a world where you two have become the executives, producers, writers on the reboot, A, would you guys choose to reboot it? And B, who would you cast? What changes do you think you'd make? I'm just curious on this, picking your guys' brains.
I think it's more rebootable than Secret of the Incas. I think anyway. I don't know. And I do like your casting Nick Cage. or like a Bradley Cooper.
Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, he would be great because you could weirdly believe him as a virgin. I know he's a sex symbol and all that stuff, but like he's weirdly believable because he's so cerebral. You know what I mean? Like you know I believed Charlton Heston as a virgin, which I'm sure that guy got as much action as anybody on the planet. But but you know, like people who live like up here,
live in their minds.
You know what I mean? Like, it's they don't they're sort of disassociated with like they're not Charlton Heston never came off as a hedonist. You know what I mean? Which so it was interesting casting.
Yeah,
I like Bradley Cooper for that.
Yeah, it would have to. I mean, obviously, like it would have to be rewritten. The first half for sure. I mean, I would like that. She's a prostitute. He's a virgin angle. Casting Joanna. That's a tough one. I have Scarlett Johansson stuck in my head, but that's just because I saw an interview with her recently on Today's Show. So probably not her.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
I'm gonna pick Ana de Armas just because she's the it girl right now, and I think that she could have an interesting, just slightly foreignness to the film.
Yeah,
in the sense that she could do the accent convincingly if they wanted to play it more from the New Orleans angle, and she is very clearly like young and vibrant compared to whoever they cast as Lineagen would be a lot more rougher.
Yeah.
Right. I propose, and I'm not even a fan of him as an actor or anything like that. I would propose an actor almost like a Sterling K. Brown. As not as Joanna, but but as Lineagen, where it's like, okay, that's the time period that somebody could still have conceivably escaped from antebellum South.
Yeah.
And then started essentially, you have an interesting complexity because he would have essentially started his own plantation in South America.
Yeah.
And then you could have like, you could sort of switch the ethnicities of the characters. And then you have like that level of, and then it's believable that he would have been denied a lot of the regular sort of rites of passage of adolescence, and then you might have and then I think Joanna, in at least in the American Pulps version, would be a sex worker looking for a new option.
Yeah,
and there's some like you could swap the ethnicity of the characters and make it about the same things but about other things too.
It
You know what I'm
adds
saying? And then I would probably establish the siege of the ants. I mean, I know they did it in the movie, but like you could compress the time period.
Yep.
You could compress the drama of the movie where like as this sort of like weird courtship is occurring, you sort of pressure cooker it a little bit.
Yep.
I don't think a modern audience would be able to, at least in a feature. Now, TV dramas now, you can go a whole season and one thing happens. It drives me crazy. Yeah. But in a movie, it's a different situation, you know. And
I like the Sterling K. Brown because that's like one thing I do like with like shows and stories with slavery is the overseer and them having control over their fellow black slaves basically,
right.
And it's always an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, and Sterling K. Brown has that, like, he looks like someone who grinds his jaw a lot. You know what I mean? Like he's sort of another one of these people that appears to live up here as an actor. I mean, I don't know the guy, but but it could be interesting.
Yeah, he could play that role.
I like the pitches. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for The Naked Jungle. Where can people go learn more about you both and American Pulps?
AmericanPulps.com, and basically any social media is at American Pulps. Keep it pretty easy.
That's it, baby.
All right, gentlemen, thank you again for joining me for The Naked Jungle. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thanks for having us, man.
Always fun.